As you can see, I was getting our Orphan Train ready. We are on day 2 of Orphan Train. Sorry about the Nora book, but I couldn't do that. So February 4th, it is day 307. Thanks so much for joining me here in the reading room. Let's get started. New York City, 1929. So what it looks like from this book is that we are just getting a little snippet of the life of some of these people. So we started with Spruce Harbor, Maine, and there were 2 chapters there telling the Molly's story. Now we'll probably go through the 2 chapters in New York City in 1929. There's quite a few of those there. And then, oh, look, and then we're back to Spruce Harbor, Maine. Oh, okay. Okay. So we will get to know what's in Granny's attic. Spruce Harbor, Maine, 20. Oh, New York City, 1929. Maisie sensed it first. She wouldn't stop crying since she was a month old when our mother got sick. Macy, yeah, I guess it's Macy, had slept with me on my narrow cot in the small windowless room we shared with our brothers. It was so dark that I wondered, as I had many times before, if this was what blindness felt like. I used to do that too, this enveloping void, because I slept in the basement. I could barely make out, or perhaps only sense, the forms of the boys, stirring fitfully but not yet awake. Dominic and James, 6-year-old twins, huddled together for warmth on a pallet on the floor. Sitting on the cot with my back against the wall, I held Macy the way Ma'am had shown me, cupped over my shoulder. I tried everything I could think of to comfort her, all the things that had worked before, stroking her back, running 2 fingers down the bridge of her nose, humming our father's favorite song, My Singing Bird, softly in her ear. I have heard the blackbird pipe his note, the thrush and the linnet too, but there's none of them can sing so sweet, my singing bird, as you. But she only cleared her throat. But she only shrieked louder, her body convulsing in spasms. Macy was 18 months old, but her weight was like a bundle of rags. Only a few weeks after she was born, Ma'am came down with the fever and could no longer feed her. So we made do with warm, sweetened water, slow-cooked, crushed oats, milk when we could afford it. All of us were thin. Food was scarce. Days went by when we had little more than rubbery potatoes in weak broth. Ma'am wasn't much of a cook, even in the best of health, and some days she didn't bother to try. More than once, until I learned to cook, we ate potatoes raw from the bin. It had been 2 years since we left our home on the west coast of Ireland. We ate raw potatoes. I ate raw potatoes before. There was nothing in the house. It had been 2 years since we left our home on the west coast of Ireland. Life was hard there, too. I remember things. Our Da held and lost a string of jobs, none of which were enough to support us. We lived in a tiny, unheated house made of stone in a small village in County Galway called Kinvara. People all around us were fleeing to America. We heard tales of oranges the size of baking potatoes, fields of grain waving under sunny skies, clean, dry timber houses with indoor plumbing and electricity, jobs as plentiful as the fruit on the trees. As one final act of kindness toward us, or perhaps to rid themselves of the nuisance of constant worry, Da's parents and sisters scraped together the money for ocean passage for our family of 5, and on a warming spring day, we boarded the Agnes Pauline, bound for Ellis Island. The only link we had to our future was a name scrawled on a piece of paper my father tucked in his shirt pocket as we boarded the ship. A man who had emigrated 10 years earlier and now, according to his Kinvara relatives, owned a respectable dining establishment in New York City. Despite having lived all our lives in a seaside village, none of us had ever been on a boat, much less a ship in the middle of the ocean. Except for my brother Dom, fortified with the constitution of a bull, we were ill for much of the voyage. It was worse for Mam, who discovered on the boat she was again with child and could hardly keep any food down. But even with all of this, as I stood on the lower deck outside our dark, cramped rooms in steerage, watching the oily water churn beneath the Agnes Pauline, I felt my spirits lift. Surely I thought we would find a place for ourselves in America. The morning that we arrived in New York Harbor was so foggy and overcast that though my brothers and I stood at the railing, squinting into the drizzle, we could barely make out the ghostly form of the Statue of Liberty a short distance from the docks. We were herded into long lines to be inspected, interrogated, stamped, and then set loose among hundreds of other immigrants speaking languages that sounded to my ears like the braying of farm animals. There were no waving fields, that I could see, no oversized oranges. We took a ferry to the island of Manhattan and walked the streets, Mam and I staggering under the weight of our possessions, the twins clamoring to be held, Dot with a suitcase under each arm, clutching a map in one hand and the tattered paper with Mark Flannery, the Irish Rose, Delancey Street, written in his mother's crabbed cursive in the other. After losing our way several times, Da gave up on the map and began asking people on the street for directions. More often than not, they turned away without answering. One man spit on the ground, his face twisted with loathing. But finally we found the place, an Irish pub, as seedy as the roughest ones in the back streets of Galway. Mam and the boys and I waited on the sidewalk while Da went inside. The rain had stopped. Steam rose from the wet street into the humid air. We stood in our damp clothing, stiffened from sweat and ground in dirt, scratching our scabbed heads from lice on the ship as pervasive as seasickness. Our feet blistering in the new shoes Graham had bought before we left, but Mam didn't let us wear until we walked on American soil and wondered what we had gotten ourselves into. Except for the sorry reproduction of an Irish pub before us, nothing in this new land bore the slightest resemblance of the world we knew. Mark Flannery had received a letter from his sister and was expecting us. He hired our Da as a dishwasher and took us to a neighborhood like no place I'd ever seen. Tall brick buildings packed together on narrow streets teeming with people. He knew on Elizabeth Street. We read about Elizabeth Street. After he left us at the door, we followed the Polish landlord, Mr. Kaminsky, down the tiled hallway and up the stairs, struggling in the heat and the dark with our bags while he lectured us on the virtues of cleanliness and civility and industriousness, all of which he clearly suspected we lacked. I have no trouble with the Irish as long as you stay out of trouble, he told us in his booming voice. Glancing at Da's face, I saw an expression I'd never seen before, but instantly understood. The shock of realization that here in this foreign place, he'd be judged harshly as soon as he opened his mouth. The landlord called our new home a railroad apartment, each room leading to the next like railway cars. My parents' tiny bedroom with the window facing the back of another building was at one end. The room I shared with the boys and Macy was next, then the kitchen, and then the front parlor with 2 windows overlooking the busy street. Mr. Kaminsky pulled a chain hanging from the pressed metal kitchen ceiling, and light seeped from a bulb, casting a wan glow over a scarred wooden table, a small stained sink with a faucet that ran cold, a gas stove. In the hall outside the apartment door was a lavatory we shared with our neighbors, a childless German couple called the Schatzmans. The landlord told us. They keep quiet and will expect you to do the same, he said, frowning as my brothers, restless and fidgety, made a game of shoving each other. Despite the landlord's disapproval, the sweltering heat, the gloomy rooms, and the cacophony of strange noises, so unfamiliar to my country ears, I felt another swell of hope. As I looked around our 4 rooms, it didn't seem that we were off to a fresh start, having left behind the many hardships of life in Kinvara, the damp that sank into our bones, the miserable cramped hut, our father's drinking. Did I mention that? That threw every small gain into peril. Here, our Da had the promise of a job. We could pull a chain for light. The twist of a knob brought running water just outside the door in a dry hallway, a toilet and bathtub. However modest, this was a chance for a new beginning. I don't know how much of my memory of this time is affected by my age now and how much is a result of the age. I was then 7 when we left Kinvara, 9 on that night when Macy wouldn't stop crying, that night that even more than leaving Ireland changed the course of my life forever. 82 years later, the sound of her crying still haunts me. If only I had paid closer attention to why she was crying instead of simply trying to quiet her. If only I had paid closer attention. I was so afraid that our lives would fall apart again that I tried to ignore the things that frightened me most. Our Da's continued love affair with drink, which a change in country did not change. Ma'am's black moods and rages, the incessant fighting between them. I wanted everything to be all right. I held Macy to my chest and whispered in her ear, "There's none of them can sing so sweet, my singing bird, as you," trying to silence her. When she finally stopped, I was only relieved, not understanding that Macy was like a canary in a mine, warning us of danger, but it was too late. 3 days after the fire, Mr. Shazman wakes me from sleep to tell me that he and Mrs. Shazman have figured out a perfect solution. Yes, he says perfect, in his German accent. I learned in this instant the terrible power of superlatives. They will take me to the Children's Aid Society, a place staffed by friendly social workers who keep the children in their care warm and dry and fed. I can't go, I say. My mother will need me when she gets out of the hospital. I know that my father and brothers are dead. I saw them in the hallway covered with sheets. But Ma'am was taken away on a stretcher, and I saw Macy moving, whimpering, as a man in uniform carried her down the hall. He shakes his head. She won't be coming back. But Macy then... "Your sister Margaret didn't make it," he says, turning away. My mother and father, 2 brothers, and a sister as dear to me as my own self. There is no language for my loss, and even if I find words to describe what I feel, there is no one to tell. Everyone I am attached to in the world, this new world, is dead or gone. The night of the fire, the night they took me, I could hear Mrs. Schatzman in her bedroom fretting with her husband about what to do with me. "I didn't ask for this," she hissed, the words as distinct to my ears as if she'd been in the same room. Those Irish, too many children in too small a space. The only surprise is that this kind of thing doesn't happen more. As I listened through the wall, a hollow space opened within me. I didn't ask for this. Only hours earlier, my Da had come from his job at the bar and changed his clothes as he always did after work, shedding rank smells with each layer. Ma'am mended a pile of clothes she'd taken in for money. Dominic peeled potatoes. James played in a corner. I drew a piece of paper. I drew on a piece of paper with Macy, teaching her letters, the hot water bottle weight and warmth of her on my lap, her sticky fingers in my hair. I tried to forget the horror of what happened, or perhaps forget is the wrong word. How can I forget? And yet, how can I move forward even a step without tamping down the despair I feel? When I close my eyes, I hear Macy's cries and Mam's screams, smell the acrid smoke, feel the heat of the fire on my skin, and heave upright my palate in the Scasman's parlor, soaked in a cold sweat. My mother's parents are dead, her brothers in Europe, one having followed the other to serve in the military, and I know nothing about how to find them. But it occurs to me, and I tell Mr. Schatzman, that someone might try to get in touch with my father's mother and sister back in Ireland, though we haven't had contact with them since we came to this country. I never saw a letter from Graham, nor did I ever see my father writing one. Our life in New York was so bleak, and we clung to it with such unsteady grip that I doubt my dad had much he would want to report. I don't know much more than the name of our village and my father's family name, though perhaps this information would be enough. But Mr. Shazman frowns and shakes his head, and it's then I realize just how alone I am. There is no adult on this side of the Atlantic who has reason to take any interest in me. No one to guide me onto a boat or pay for my passage. I'm a burden to society and nobody's responsibility. You, the Irish girl, over here. A thin scowling matron with the white bonnet beckons with the bony finger. She must know I'm Irish from the papers Mr. Shazman filled out when he brought me into the Children's Aid several weeks ago. Or perhaps it is my accent still as thick as peat. Humph, she says, pursing her lips when I stand in front of her, red hair. Unfortunate, the plump woman beside her says, then sighs, and those freckles, it's hard enough to get placed out at her age. The bony one licks her thumb and pushes the hair off my face. Don't want to scare them away now, do you? You must keep it pulled back. If you're neat and well-mannered, they might not be so quick to jump to conclusions. She buttons my sleeves, and when she leans down to retie each of my black shoes, a mildew smell rises from her bonnet. It is imperative that you look presentable, the kind of girl a woman would want around the house, clean and well-spoken, but not too... She shoots the other one a look. To what, I ask. Some women don't take kindly to a comely girl sleeping under the same roof, she says. Not that you're so, but still, she points at my necklace. What is that? I reach up and touch the small pewter cladog Celtic cross I have worn since I was 6, tracking the grooved outline of the heart with my finger, an Irish cross. You're not allowed to bring keepsakes with you on the train. My heart is pounding so hard I believe she can hear it. It was my Graham's. The two women peer at the cross, and I can see them hesitating, trying to decide what to do. She gave it to me in Ireland before we came over. It's the only thing I have left. This is true, but it's also true that I say it because I think it will sway them, and it does. We hear the train before we can see it. A low hum, a rumble underfoot, a deep-throated whistle, faint at the first and then louder as the train gets close. We crane our necks to look down the track, even as one of our sponsors, Mrs. Schatcherd, shouts in her reedy voice, "Children! Places! Children!" And suddenly, here it is, a black engine looming over us, shadowing the platform, letting out a hiss of steam like a massive panting animal. I am with a group of 20 children, all ages. We are scrubbed and in our donated clothes, the girls in dresses and white pinafores and thick stockings, the boys in knickers that button below the knee, white dress shirts, neckties, thick wool suit coats. It is an unnecessary warm It is an unseasonably warm October day, Indian summer. Mrs. Sheckard calls it, and we are sweltering on the platform. My hair is damp against my neck. The pinafore is stiff and uncomfortable. In one hand, I clutch a small brown suitcase that, accepting the cross, contains everything I have in the world, all newly acquired: a Bible, 2 sets of clothes, a hat, a black coat several sizes too small, a pair of shoes. Inside the coat is my name, embroidered by a volunteer at the Children's Aid Society, Niam Power. Yes, Niam. Oh, pronounced Neve. A common enough name in County Galway, and not so unusual in Irish tenements in New York, but certainly not acceptable anywhere the train might take me. The lady who sewed those letters several days ago tissed over the task. I hope you aren't attached to that name, young miss, because I can promise you, if you're lucky enough to be chosen, your new parents will change it in a second. My Neve, my Da used to call me, but I'm not so attached to the name. I know it's hard to pronounce, foreign, unlovely to those who don't understand a peculiar jumble of unmatched consonants. No one feels sorry for me because I've lost my family. Each of us has a sad tale. We wouldn't be here otherwise. The general feeling is that it's best not to talk about the past, that the quickest relief will come in forgetting. The Children's Aid treats us as if we were born the moment we were brought in, that like moths breaking out of their cocoons, we've left our old lives behind, and God willing, we'll soon launch ourselves into new ones. Mrs. Sheckard and Mrs. Curran, the milquetoast with a brown mustache, line us by height, tallest to shortest, which generally means oldest to youngest, with the babies in the arms of the children over 8. Mrs. Sheckard pushes a baby into my arms before I can object, an olive-skinned, cross-eyed 14-month-old named Carmen, who I can already guess will soon answer to another name. He clings to me like a terrified kitten. Carmine, it's Carmine. Brown suitcase in one hand, the other holding Carmine secure, I navigate the high steps into the train unsteadily before Mr. Curran scurries over to take my bag. Use some common sense, girl, he scolds. If you fall, you'll crack your skull, and then we'll have to leave the both of you behind. The wooden seats in the train car all face forward except for 2 groups of seats opposite each other in the front, separated by a narrow aisle. I find a 3-seater for Carmine and me, and Mr. Curran heaves my suitcase into the rack above my head. Carmine soon wants to crawl off the seat, and I am so busy trying to distract him from escaping that I barely notice as the other kids come on board and the car fills. Mr. Sheckard stands at the front of the car holding on to 2 leather seat backs, the arms of her black cape draping like the wings of a crow. They call this an orphan train, children. You are lucky to be on it. You are leaving behind an evil place, full of ignorance, poverty, and vice, for the nobility of country life. While you are on this train, you will follow simple rules. You will be cooperative and listen to instructions. You will be respectful of your chaperones. You will treat the train car respectfully and will not damage it in any way. You will encourage your seatmates to behave appropriately. In short, you will make Mr. Curran and me proud of your behavior. And that's all it took for kids to behave themselves. You will encourage your seatmates to behave appropriately as well. That's just awesome. Her voice rises as we settle in our seats. When you are allowed to step off the train, you will stay within the areas we designate. You will not wander off alone at any time. And if your behavior proves to be a problem, if you cannot adhere to these simple rules of common decency, you'll be sent straight back to where you came from and discharged on the street, left to fend for yourselves. The younger children appear bewildered by this litany, but those of us older than 6 or 7 had already heard a version of it several times at the orphanage before we left. The words wash over me. Of more immediate concern is the fact that Carmine is hungry, as am I. We had only a dry piece of bread and a tin cup of milk for breakfast hours ago before it was light. Carmine is fussing and chewing on his hand, a habit that must be comforting to him. Macy sucked her thumb. But I know not to ask when food is coming. It will come when the sponsors are ready to give it, and no entreaties will change that. I tugged Carmine onto my lap. At breakfast this morning, when I dropped sugar into my tea, I slipped 2 lumps into my pocket. Now I rub one between my fingers, crushing it to granules, then licking my index finger and stick it in the sugar before popping it in Carmine's mouth. The look of wonder on his face, his delight as he realizes his good fortune, makes me smile. He clutches my hand with both of his chubby ones, holding on tight as he drifts off to sleep. Eventually, I too am lulled to sleep by the steady rumble of the clicking wheels. When I wake with Carmine stirring and rubbing his eyes, Mrs. Scatcherd is standing over me. She is close enough that I can see the small pink veins, like seams on the back of a delicate leaf, spreading across her cheeks, the downy fur on her jawbone, her bristly black eyebrows. She stares at me intently, though through her small round glasses. There were little ones at home, I gather. I nod. You appear to know what you're doing. As if on cue, Carmine bleats in my lap. I think he's hungry, I tell her. I feel his diaper rag, which is dry on the outside but spongy and ready for a change. She turns towards the front of the car, gesturing back at me over her shoulder. Come on, then. Holding the baby against my chest, I rise unsteadily from my seat and sway behind her up the aisle. Children sitting in 2s and 3s look up with doleful eyes as I pass. None of us knows where we are headed, and I think that except for the very youngest, each of us is apprehensive and fearful. Our sponsors have told us little. We know only that we are going to a land where apples grow in abundance on low-hanging branches, and cows and pigs and sheep roam freely in the fresh country air, a land where good people, families are eager to take us in. I haven't seen a cow or any animal for that matter, except a stray dog and the occasional hardy bird since leaving County Galway, and I look forward to seeing them again, but I am skeptical. I know all too well how it is when the beautiful visions you've been fed don't match up with reality. Many of the children on this train have been at the Children's Aid for so long that they have no memories of their mothers. They can start anew, welcomed into the arms of the only families they'll ever know. I remember too much: my Gram's ample bosom, her small dry hands, the dark cottage with a crumbling stone wall flanking its narrow garden, the heavy mist that settled over the bay early in the morning and late in the afternoon, the mutton and potatoes Gram would bring to the house when Mam was too tired to cook or we didn't have money for ingredients, buying milk and bread at the corner shop on Phantom Street, strayed a Fuca, my Da called it in Gaelic, so called because the stone houses in that section of town were built on cemetery grounds. My Mam's chapped lips and fleeting smile, the melancholy that filled our home in Kinvara and traveled with us across the ocean to take up permanent residence in the dim corners of our tenement apartment in New York. And now here I am on this train wiping Carmine's bottom while Mrs. Scatcherd hovers above us, shielding me with a blanket to hide a procedure from Mr. Curran issuing instructions I don't need. Once I have Carmine clean and dry, I sling him over my shoulder and make my way back to my seat while Mr. Curran distributes lunch pails filled with bread and cheese and fruit and tin cups of milk. Feeding Carmine bread soaked in milk reminds me of the Irish dish called champ I often made for Macy and the boys, a mash of potatoes, milk, green onions on the rare occasion when we had them, and salt. On the nights when we went to bed hungry, all of us dreamed of that champ. After distributing the food and one wool blanket to each of us, Mr. Curran announces that there is a bucket and a diaper for water, and if we raise our hands, we can come forward for a drink. There's an indoor toilet, he informs us, though as we find out, this toilet is a terrifying open hole above the tracks. Carmine, drunk on sweet milk and bread, splays in my lap, his dark head in the crook of my arm. I wrap the scratchy blanket around us in the rhythmic clacking of the train and the stirring peopled silence of the car. I feel cocooned. Carmine smiles, as lovely as a custard, the solid weight of him so comforting it makes me teary. His spongy skin, pliable limbs, dark fringed lashes, even his sighs make me think, how could they not, of Macy? The idea of her dying alone in the hospital, suffering painful burns, is too much to bear. Why am I alive and she dead? In our tenement, there were families who spilled in and out of each other's apartments, sharing childcare and stews. The men worked together in grocery stores and blacksmith shops. The women ran cottage industries, making lace and darning socks. When I passed by the apartments and saw them sitting together in a circle, hunched over their work, speaking a language I didn't understand, I felt a sharp pang. My parents left Ireland in hopes of a brighter future, all of us believing we were on our way to a land of plenty. I mean, and how exciting for them. As it happened, they failed in this new land, failed in just about every way possible. It may have been that they were weak people, ill-suited for the rigors of emigration, its humiliations and compromises, its competing demands of self-discipline and adventurousness. But I wonder how things might have been different if my father was part of a family business that gave him structure and a steady paycheck instead of working in a bar, the worst place for a man like him, or if my mother had been surrounded by women, sisters, and nieces, perhaps who could have provided relief from destitution and loneliness, a refuge from strangers. In Kinvara, poor as we were and unstable, we at least had family nearby, people who knew us. We shared traditions and a way of looking at the world. We didn't know until we left how much we took those things for granted. You know, this just to me speaks to the problem of alcoholism. There may have been a family in Kinvara for you, but not for your dad, right? And the lawlessness that comes with alcoholism and the drifting that comes with alcoholism and the dishonesty that comes with alcoholism that your family couldn't put up with. So, you know, some things in some ways, if your dad wanted to keep the family together, you didn't have that family in Ireland anymore. And if he had a track record, if he had a record, then getting out of that area would really speak volumes to why she ended up here in New York City in 1929. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. It is February 4th. We have just completed day 307 in the classroom. We complete that day. We complete our day with the reading room, and I'm so happy to be here. And I really hope that it really does. I know I think of this because I worry about a lot of people. And I do think that people can get knowledge. I just don't always know if they can get their curiosity filled, if you know what I mean. If you aren't, I know you can. I just like the whole living aspect of learning. And what I mean by that is learning makes me live. And reading makes me learn. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom, day 307, February 4th, where we are always making it look easy, our work at bringing you a healthier mind, a healthier body, and a healthier spirit. Thanks.